I remember sitting on a yellow couch in my brand new boss's office. Now, he'd been my leader for about 9 months, and we were kind of doing that very first review. And the section on the review was there. Is there anything you'd like to share with me that I can do my job better? You know, the leader's asking this question. And I can remember my hands being really sweaty and like putting them on the couch because I wasn't sure, because I had some difficult things to say, and I wanted to say them with kindness, and I wanted to say them with clarity. And I'd had enough experience with this leader to know that the response could be unpredictable at best. And I'm really curious, if you're listening live, if you've ever had that moment where I need to say something, I have to speak up in some way, and I'm having those moments of nerves because you're not sure what's going to happen. And I I mean, I really think so many of us have had that experience. And what I have discovered is there's so much about the culture that makes those moments of speaking up go really great or fall down, which is what happened in my experience, which I can talk more about at another time. But I really want to help you as a leader not only learn how to speak up, but really create that culture where people want to come forward with their ideas, their concerns, even their praise for things. And so one of my favorite leadership books of the last year is Stephen's book, Speak Up Culture. And so I am so excited that he was willing to join us today. He is a speaker, he's a consultant, obviously the author of Creating Speak Up Culture. And he has a really great subtitle, and I'm going to let him tell it because there's a really important word in it. So I'm so excited to welcome Stephen on the show. Welcome.
I got my mugs. I'm a complex human being, and I got my mugs empty. My George Costanza mug is empty at present, and this is with
It's so
some
good.
Earl Grey tea.
I left my water in the other room because if you're a regular watcher, you know this isn't my typical space. And I had to go grab my coffee just to make sure I had something.
The show is on the road.
That you are, yes, the mobile podcast studio with a very great blanket. It's great. I'm so glad that you could join us today. I would love for you to just share with the people, tell them a little bit about who you are and how you got to be doing this work that you're doing.
Thank you, Jen. A delight to be here. How I got to be doing the work that I'm doing, different couch, not yellow, but also pain. I mean, I'm a really big believer that a lot of our journey and a lot of our purpose lives in what have we overcome, which could be from childhood, from early on in our life, or recently. So a few things. I mean, one, I grew up with a stutter, so I know what it feels like to be voiceless. I married a speech therapist. Good choice. Not just for me, but for my kiddos and nieces and nephews as well. But I intimately know that feeling of voicelessness, which I think very much guided my passion for helping people communicate their feelings and ideas in ways that are clear and compelling, and for people to feel as though they have voice, because I know what it feels like not to have voice. And you don't need to have a speech impediment not to have a voice. That can be anyone. Yes. And I've been parts of cultures and organizations in my career that had just been on the roller coaster. I mean, my first day of my first job ever, 1,000 people were let go post-merger. So I was walking in as many more were walking out. It was an enthralling, challenging front row seat to organizational change. So I'm grateful for that experience, that it was not easy. And then in my sort of near 20-year career, I've seen organizations that have amazing cultures and amazing leaders with amazing leadership behaviors. And I've seen the very opposite of well, and how those toxic cultures, deleterious cultures, aren't just bad for business, they're bad for human beings, for our health. So, yes. Yeah.
I've absolutely experienced that. And when I was in that place, that first year, it was tolerable, which I think a lot of us experience that. And then after the third or fourth year of having almost the exact same conversation over and over and over again about the concerns, I developed this like knee injury that just would not go away. There was no reason for it. I hadn't injured myself in some way. I wasn't sleeping very well. And my kids will tell you, I mean, even when they were little, once they started sleeping through the night, I had no recollection. I mean, like, I am a sleeper. And so to not sleep was something strange. And again, that experience that a workplace culture creates for the rest of our lives, because there's no firewall between our personal and professional life, even though we try to create them, because wherever you go, there you are. You're the whole human walking around.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel it, that pain. And that is why I do what I do, because the previous leader, I had a really amazing culture. So I had that upfront seat to seeing, oh, it doesn't have to be this way. It actually can
Yeah.
be amazing. So, okay, but I really want to hear from you, and I would love to hear. We toss around the word culture a lot. I obviously talk about culture a lot. Can you give us your definition of what you think of as workplace culture or organizational culture?
Yeah, yeah, and it can even be culture of a neighborhood or a
Totally,
society or a
a
community.
family. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
hmm
So the way I define culture is very much in the how. It's how we treat each other and how
hmm
work gets done. It's in
Yeah.
behavior. In the book, I put forth a little equation for culture, that
Yes.
culture equals values multiplied by behavior, and all of
hmm
that is raised to the power of influence.
I love
Because the
that.
more influence you have in a culture, the more your individual values and behavior bear weight on that culture. So,
Absolutely.
the purpose of our values is to know what they are, what they look like in our behavior, and then
hmm
to live them. If you just
Yes.
put values on your screensaver or your walls, you have good wallpaper, virtually or physically. The purpose of your values are to enact them, are to live them, are to behave them. And it's ever more important, as I said, the more you rise up in an organization through title or through your influence.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I loved about your book, because I think culture is it feels so intangible. And some people talk about culture as like, yeah, we have like Sunday, Friday, and which, yeah, great. If everybody wants ice cream on Fridays, that is fun. But if you can't,
Well,
I mean,
what
I'm
if you're
there for
lactose
fun.
intolerant? Yeah.
Yeah, but what if that is not tied back to some specific value and saying we are demonstrating care or we are demonstrating joy through this particular event and it does these XYZ things, it's just a thing that is an artifact of actually probably misalignment in your culture. And there's all kinds of different ways around how we define culture. So I appreciate that it is like based in your values. I just did a retreat for women leaders and we spent time really digging into their values and creating a values blueprint. What does it look like when I live out these values? And how do these values align with my organization's values to help find that meaning in work? And I just think the value component of the way you define culture and then how you get that done is so incredibly powerful. So when we talk about culture having influence on the way we work, talk to me a little bit about why you see culture as the vehicle, like as this,
Mm.
like this is what creates experience. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, a great friend and mentor of mine, Peter Docker, who I worked with on Simon Sinek's team, and he's a retired Royal Air Force pilot. He has a quote that I love, which is relationship is the foundation of accomplishment. And I
Mm,
think that's both relationship with ourself. There's no mistake, Jen, that I think every single leadership development program I've seen, participated in as a facilitator, speaker, or participant, every single one starts with a module on self. Because, yeah, your
mhm,
relationship with yourself matters a lot. An insecure leader is a dangerous leader. And so I
mm,
think we need to find security in our strengths and our limitations and then proceed with what you know.
yeah,
But relationship means self, relationship means with others and the world around us as well.
yes,
And so relationship matters. And if you show up to work and the culture is deleterious, meaning who cares if you have ice cream on Fridays, if from Monday to Thursday we yell at each other, we talk bad about each other, but behind our back we aren't honest with each other. It's a
mhm.
culture of passive nice as opposed
Nice. I
to
was gonna say the culture of nice that is almost more
yes,
damaging.
yes, yes. So how we feel and the relationships that we have impact our productivity, impact the work product we have. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like, you can buy a snowmobile or a snow machine, but you can put that in snow or you can put it in sand. And if you put it in sand,
Mhm.
don't bother putting, oils and lubrication and fuel in it either. Like, it'll work for a period of time in sand, but it's not going to work well. It's going to need repair. It's going to need to be replaced. That is the experience of if you have a culture that actually degrades and takes from people's life experience.
I mean, we feel that as humans. I was thinking this week. So the reason I'm not home is because my husband is leading a conference today in agricultural innovation, and we brought our youngest daughter. One, because it's fun, and we didn't want to leave the 14-year-old home by herself, but also I love letting her see how we work. Like, she gets to see, here's what he does. I'm doing this today, plus some other meetings. And I thought, gosh, how many other people wouldn't want their children working where they work
Mm.
because of, and they couldn't name it, but it's probably because of the culture, the way they're treated, how things get done, or the values misalignment. Like in your equation, if the values aren't being multiplied by behavior, they're not attached, it's not
Yep.
working. And we all feel that, like we know what that emotionally feels like, but then we get caught up in, I think, our, what I would call extreme capitalism, maybe, society. But I think from reading your book and the other research I've done, that actually positive workplace cultures and cultures that have this opportunity for people to contribute in the way you're describing a speak up culture actually do better over time. I mean, what have you found in your research?
I mean, yes,
Mm.
absolutely. I mean, Project Aristotle, which was done at Google, saw that psychological safety, which is a
Mhm.
belief that we can take interpersonal risk, is a key determinant of high performing team success. I've seen studies where it's close to like 400% growth and performance of those
Yeah.
teams that do have trust and
Yeah.
psychological safety, as opposed to those who don't. So it's
Mhm.
huge for performance. It's not easy to do, though. I mean,
Right.
leadership is hard work, and there are so many people post COVID, especially, who are stepping into leadership roles for the first time.
Mhm.
As you know, in the book, I wrote a trifecta of chapters, because I'm often asked, like, okay, I'm bought in, I believe in this stuff. How do you actually do it?
Right.
Well, like, I wrote a book for leaders, whether capital L or lowercase l. So
Mhm.
capital L means you have the title, you have the role, we expect you to behave as such. Lowercase l leader means you don't necessarily have the authority or the title, but you behave as a leader does. I'd
Absolutely.
rather someone without the title but the behavior than someone with the
Yes.
title but not the behavior, which is
Yes.
dangerous.
Yes.
But yeah, the three chapters that I wrote, it's a define leadership. What do you
Mhm.
mean by leadership in behavior in your organization? Now, the number of times I've seen organizations, Jen, have a nice postcard of like, these are our leadership competencies and behaviors. And I'm like, great. Are they tied to your performance management for your leaders? No, no. Why would we do that? Well, you need to bake in the very behaviors into the way that you're selecting and promoting folks. Because if you have a definition, but you don't use them, you have a definition that is making no impact.
Right.
And then we need to help leaders lead. It's
Yeah.
not easy work. Just as parenting isn't easy. And sometimes the best way to learn how to be a parent is on the job. It behooves us to
It's the
babysit and
only
read
way.
books and practice, and it's the same with leadership as well.
Mhm.
You can read as many books as you want, but until you're actually leading,
Mhm.
you don't know, which is why I'm a huge proponent of get involved in extracurriculars, get involved in that charity campaign, do things to test that leadership early so that you
Mhm.
can know what the behaviors are, use them, and then work on that practice as you're doing now with this community, right? A community
Yeah.
is a place where people agree to grow together.
Yeah. And what is so true about leadership is like, as you define it, the capital L and lowercase l, it is that there are different forms of leadership. But as you also said at the beginning, every meaningful leadership program begins with a relationship to self. And I call that self leadership. And you can't lead anyone else if you cannot lead yourself first. And you have to see yourself as that. Like, I get to be in charge of me, and that agency starts to change how you approach even leading other people. It actually, I think in my experience, when I have been consulting and coaching leaders, when they think of leading themselves first, they tend to be more empathetic leaders rather than top down militant leaders, because they're like, oh crap, I'm pretty hard. Like, I joke all the time that
Mhm.
I'm the hardest one to manage. Uh, and so leading other people becomes more empathetic, more vulnerable, more transparent, which gets more things done. So I love what Frank said. He was like, that it's a whisper, not a shout, like that you can get into people when you are really based in that relationship and helping others come along into that experience because you've defined what leadership is, your behaviors match your actions, and it is complex. So you should be helping other people do it too. Um, so one of the things that I think I run up against when I am trying to help places grow is that it is really complicated and they kind of want the checkbox. They want it to be more black and white. How do you help that type of organization or that type of leader, like, just give me what I'm supposed to do, rather than let them embrace the humanity and the nuance? While there are absolutely skills and things that we should do and competencies and all of that, how do you help them see that from a big picture idea?
So you're saying, how do you help a team or an organization that needs sort of a checklist of do this, do this, do this? Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the challenge with any of these labels that are earned through our behavior, leader,
Hmm.
good parent, good friend, good listener. I can't say to you, Jen, I'm such a good listener. Like you get to decide that. So this is the challenging piece of, for any leader, when I talk about a speak up culture and they're like, oh yeah, we have that. My question to them is, how do you know? And leadership is more adaptive than it is technical. You
Yes.
can't just check off a list. And it is to your point, it is a complicated, complex, messy human experience. And so I think there's two things we can do. We can do assessments and surveys, hopefully more than once a year. But I have two kids, Jen. I care that they feel a part of my family. I care that they feel that they have voice and agency and that they can influence how we behave as a family. My wife and I are still in charge, but I want them to feel as though that they're a part of something. Now,
Yes.
I could share that message with them, kindly ask them to click on a link in an email and fill out the survey that my wife and I have made to get a pulse of their engagement in this family. Valuable. It is but one set of data points. I should still go for a walk with them one-on-one or as a group, right? I
Yes.
should still engage in the worthwhile human conversations to figure it out and listen. And we need to know. So yes, leadership is about self-leadership, but then it's also about the platinum rule rather than the golden rule.
Yes.
So
I
I
love that part. So remind us what the platinum rule is because it's so, so good.
Yeah, so I teach the golden rule to my 5-year-old, which is treat others the way you wish to be treated. Basic respect. Now he's beginning to develop some empathy. So as I'm teaching with my 8-year-old, you don't just necessarily treat the people the way you wish to be treated. You have to understand how do they wish to be treated. And we're
Mhm.
diverse people. We all have different strengths and experiences and preferences based on our personalities and our experiences, where we
Yeah.
come from and what we want. And so the platinum rule is not treat others the way you wish to be treated. It's treat
Mhm.
others the way they wish to be treated, which requires some relationship building and some empathy.
Absolutely. And as you're talking about, the idea, we find it funny that if you would survey your kids, but we do informally often do that. But what I think is so powerful and terrifying about leadership is when you take that walk with your kid or when you sit down for coffee with that employee and you ask these hard questions and they don't come back with all of the joyous, yes, you're amazing. They actually tell
Yeah.
you stuff that you're like, hey, this behavior, and if they're doing it well and following a great feedback process and all of that, this is causing me difficulty. And you're like, oh, I have to take that. I can remember we have 4 kids and 2 of them are in college now, 2 are still at home. And walking with my second son somewhere, and he was like, but when this happens, you make that harder for me. And I'm like, oh, it's like but then I could see that in other places in my leadership. So even though it was really humbling, which is good, and challenging to hear that type of feedback, it was actually so powerful. And it was such a generous act from, at the time, an 18-year-old. It's so
But
powerful.
yeah, but this, Jen, is the difference between an insecure shut up leader and a secure speak up leader.
Mhm.
So when you're an insecure shut up leader and you ask for feedback and you get something negative, you're sitting on that yellow couch again.
Yeah.
And even though you've had the same conversation multiple times over, the response is denial, excuse,
Yeah.
gaslighting, toxic
100%.
positivity,
Mhm.
versus, like we play in our family almost every night during dinner, high low buffalo. right? What's a high from your day? What's a low from your day? And what's a surprise, which we, for some reason, we call Buffalo because it
because it
rhymes
rhymes
and
and it's fun.
it rhymes and we're geographically close to Buffalo and cheer for the Bills. So what do you know? But when you get critical feedback, you have to train yourself and know as a secure speak up leader, wow, what an awesome gift. Someone is being honest with me. Someone is sharing their real experience with me. Doesn't mean it's fact, but it's their version or experience of it.
Yeah.
And it behooves you to ask more, understand, because if you ignore or worse punish that truth showing up, it's just not going to show up again.
Yeah. And then you miss, even if, let's just put a percentage on it. 60% of that is actually something you need to deal with. That's a huge amount. And then you've missed a chance for connection, first of all, with another human, an opportunity to make things better. I mean, I know that my very strong bent as a deep idealist, I use the Enneagram, which is a personality framework, as a 7 who loves the positive and let's make things better, even when it's a little hard. It kills me to miss not making things better, even though I've had to learn that everything that is better usually is on the other side, at least a little bit of pain, and moving forward in that. And you miss these amazing opportunities. Michelle's saying it is a very real thing. It's so real. And I am, oh my gosh, I'm just looking at the time. I want to keep talking to you forever. I'm loving this conversation. You're so helpful and full of wisdom. Would you please tell everybody how they can keep up with you, where to find you? We've got your website here. Tell us how to keep in touch with you.
Yeah. Thank you. And great to see Michelle and Shelby and Frank here, some friends, which is fantastic. I believe for the time being, I'm the only Steven Shedletzky in the entire world. So all you handfuls of Shedletzkys, please be mindful when you name your
kids.
Child. Yeah. But if you look up my name, you can find me in all the places. I'm most active on LinkedIn, and the website is inspires.com.
I love it. He is a great follow, everybody. If you are interested in just a really great positive leader with lots of just deep wisdom that comes from a lot of amazing experience. I'm so privileged and grateful that you were here today. And if you enjoyed this conversation with Shed, next week, we will be back with Kate Harris. She is a business strategist and unbelievable writer. And she is coming to talk about the power of having a point of view as a leader. And so don't miss that. Next week, we're live every week at 1 p.m. Eastern here on LinkedIn and YouTube. So hopefully we will catch you next week. Thanks everybody for showing up, and we will see you all later. Bye. So let me put my coach hat on for just a sec. Don't just leave this here. Take a moment. What did you learn? What's your next tiny action step? Share this episode with someone and tell them. Connect with us to keep this conversation going. As always, I'm Jen Whitmer. Thank you for listening to Joyosity. I don't take for granted that your earballs have a lot of information coming at you. Please take a moment to rate and subscribe. It really helps more people join us in creating positive culture with complex people. So work is a joy, people are whole, and organizations flourish. Can't wait for you to join us next week.